Welcome back, guys. Joe Everest, the fence expert, and we're back with part 2 of April Wilkerson's most recent horizontal fence build. Part 1 went really well, and I can't wait to see this fence get finished.
Okay, in part 1 of the horizontal board-on-board fence, I showed you how I set the post, did the horizontal railing on the bottom, the top, and the vertical center supports. Now in this video, I'm going to be covering how to set the top cap, do all of the picketing, as well as the trim and the groundwork. First, let's attach the top cap. This is a board that stretches horizontally from the top of one post to another and is really straightforward to attach. You can basically throw the board up on top of the post, then drive a few screws into the top rail to hold it in place. Now onto the major step of adding pickets. With the board on board, the goal is to have 100% coverage and no visibility through the panel. The order of operations is I first laid down the back layer of pickets. These are attached directly to the post. Then I came back and attached the top layer. These are nailed into the bottom layer of pickets that they overlap on the left, right, and also the center support. Each picket getting 2 nails per position per picket. I went ahead and did up the first bay of the fence completely to make sure my spacing and technique was going to work out. It looked great, in my opinion, so I carried on. Okay. One down, guys. To make things more efficient though, I did the pickets in stages, meaning I went down the entire length of the fence and first only focused on attaching the back layer of pickets. I made a spacer to the needed height of the gap needed, and this takes out almost all of the thinking on this step. It's key that the spacer is made from something straight. The gap you go with will be determined by how wide your pickets are, but you want to aim for 3/4 of an inch overlap on each side of the picket. This will ensure that as the pickets shrink, no gaps will appear in the fence line. One thing to note here is to buy stainless steel ring shank nails. The stainless steel will prevent your fence from developing those discolored watermarks, and the ring shank will prevent them from backing out over time as the wood moves. I actually ended up timing myself, and it was taking me roughly 4 minutes per panel with my process. Now, when buying pickets, I went with Western red cedar for this entire build. Not only is the material beautiful and has naturally rot-resistant qualities, but these pickets are 3/4 of an inch, which are considerably thicker than standard.
Yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of times you'll see fence pickets that are 5/8. If you find fence pickets that are 3/4, they'll be substantially heavier and generally higher quality.
Normally, when buying a large bundle of material, there are several pieces that have to be weeded out and discarded, but I didn't have a single board that was unusable in this project, which is a first for me. Even though this is a simple step, it is the middle of summer and very draining on the body. But after making it down to the end, it was back to the beginning to start phase 2 of picketing. This stage was actually the quickest of the entire project because Jake came up with a very clever jig to speed it up drastically. He grabbed a 2x4 and made some steps, or I guess some shelves, at the needed distance of the pickets. This jig could be clamped into position on the left of each bay where the small shelf was resting on the center of the bottom layer picket so that the top layer picket could simply be set on top, manually positioned left to right, and then nailed down. Jake could feed in the pickets while I attached my side of things. Then before moving the jig, Jake quickly went through to secure his side. Then the jig could be unclamped and moved down to the next seam, and we repeated. This took the time down from roughly 4 minutes per bay to just under a minute, so it's clearly worth the time to make it. Something I chose to do along the very bottom of the fence is to make the very last picket a treated board instead of cedar. So after getting all of the top layer pickets attached, we next went back to the bottom of each bay and first added on the treated board, then attached what will be the very last top layer cedar picket. Oh, and just a note here, we ended up using a 12-foot treated board, which spans 2 bays instead of a single. And the only reason for this is because 6-foot treated boards don't exist, and an 8-foot board would create a bunch of waste. The boards that will be the most susceptible to rot are the ones in either direct contact to the ground or closest contact. So by using a treated board at the very bottom, I'm hoping that it will extend its lifespan.
Yeah, you see that a lot. You see this method used a lot in different regions. We don't use it so much here in the Midwest, but you do see that a lot. The bottom board or the kick board being a treated pine board, even on a western red cedar or any other cedar redwood fence, You see that last board be the treated pine, so that it's more or less like a sacrificial layer. If for whatever reason, if rot starts presenting, it presents it in that treated pine board, so that kicker board can be replaced over time.
Oh man, that was a ton of work. But we are getting close to finishing, so hang tight. Next up is going to be trim, which on this style has very little of. It's really just these seams where the pickets butt up to one another. A vertical 1x board is attached to each one, which not only covers up the butt joint, but also the dog ear of each picket. It is a simple but drastic change. The bottom can be lined up with a post, which you can see me doing by simply peeking at the bottom of the fence. After shooting in one nail, Jake can plumb it up at the top, and then everything can be attached all the way up before moving the whole operation over to the next seam and repeating. On my last fence, I actually purchased pre-stained pickets, and I like this because the entire board was coated, and it also saved a lot of time when installing. However, I wasn't able to find pre-stained pickets this go around, so instead, I got out the airless sprayer and applied 3 coats of an oil-based, semi-translucent, cedar-colored stain. And I not only coated the front, but also the back. I do recommend coating both sides of the fence if possible. Even though Western red cedar is naturally rot resistant, all of these additional things, like adding a stain or keeping it from contacting the ground, is only going to add more time to it. Don't get me wrong, a fence is a big project because of its scale, but if you break it down into steps, everything is actually quite easy. I would recommend not doing it in the middle of summer to make it even easier, but the point is, if a fence is on your to-do list, then there is a lot of money to be saved by tackling it yourself.
Guys, I think you'll agree with me when I say that fence turned out really well. April really knows what she's doing, and she took her time to make sure she did it right. If you guys have questions or comments about this video, be sure to leave them in the comments below. Until next time, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors.